This area is south of GAIL STAEHLIN, New Mexico, and on this particular ridge there's a long line of petroglyphs that date from about 200 AD to about 50 years ago. This particular petroglyph is a circle, which denotes the circle of life or something held in this place. Something that's pecked refers to something spiritual or something that came from the sky or something that is wet. So we have a lot of petroglyphs in this area that denote something came from the sky that was very wet and very spiritual, that the people couldn't understand or figure out.
You don't need no genius to tell that that's real.
I assume you're talking
about the autopsy film, yeah.
Oh yeah, we're talking about that today.
Yeah, blind man can see that with a cane. I mean, that's real.
Well, I can't agree with you.
Why you say
From
that?
the standpoint, I'm not that certain about it. I have never seen an actual autopsy.
But didn't you see the comments that were made on that by the people who do autopsies?
Yeah.
The
I don't
guys
believe
look at the
everything
film.
that I read, even what I see.
I mean, these guys are the experts in the field. I mean, and as the fellows in Hollywood said, that for somebody to fake that, they said they'd be glad to have them work for them, because they can't do that today.
I'm forever the skeptic.
Well, the human race hasn't changed in more than 5,000 years. It's the same today as it was during the time of Galileo.
The far fellow over there was very old, between, I'd say, 100 to 250 AD. The patination on that is very deep and colored. There's this balloon thing in the middle of him, and there are all kinds of stories that these people were brought down here from the sky or from somewhere else, that these people just arrived here.
I had never seen an autopsy. I had never cut into a cadaver of any kind. So how can I be sure? There are so many things that are done today to make that almighty buck that people can be bought easily. I'm not talking about the people that state it is an actuality, but it's just real difficult to accept all these things at face value.
On the other hand, I accept you. You are a genuine human being who was there at the time that this incident occurred. You put out the news report on it. You are a genuine, upstanding American citizen. You are not the kind of person who makes things up and lies. The thing should be believed on just on the fact that a person like you said it, a person like Jesse Marcel, that's her name? Jesse Marcel? No, I mean, he was the intelligence officer on the scene. Now, if you cannot believe these people, who can you believe?
Okay, be very careful. It's got to be in here. Where are you, little fella? I think I see it already. This is a petroglyph on a site that has about 11 miles of glyphs and pictographs. It appears to be a spaceship with lights. This is very unusual. We have Star Warriors and we have a lot of creation symbols, but as far as an all-out-and-out spaceship like that, this is the first and only one I've seen in my 26 years of research.
Okay. Is there anything that could be mistaken for, that that's a picture of something else?
No, I don't think so. Some people have thought that perhaps it was corn or what have you, but corn would be upright and it would have a lot of kernels on it.
The funny thing is, people keep asking us if we believe in UFOs. We really don't care. Point is, whether we believe in them or not, UFO stories are part of New Mexico history.
It definitely looks like a spaceship to me.
And basically, since the age is indeterminate, but it's safe to assume it's pretty old.
Yes.
Older than Roswell, older than what our popular conceptions are of what a flying saucer design is.
Absolutely. I would say that it is older than the historical documents or historical documented aliens have been arriving here in New Mexico. So it's pre-television, pre-Roswell. It's pretty pre.
Basically, we realized that there was a connection between the UFO phenomenon and the entire state of New Mexico. What we didn't realize was the profound impact that this is having on people's lives.
You see, our society is such today that nobody is believable anymore. Your best and your finest citizens in the country got to go to a court of law to prove that what they're saying is the truth. I think there's a very great breakdown in our society. It's a breakdown in our moral and spiritual values. That we have, that the lies are now so common in our country, that untruth is buried so deep that we can't even accept the good word of an honest American citizen. We gotta wait for the government to give us the answer, and the government is the biggest lies of all.
Down the road to the impact site where the bodies and the spacecraft were found.
Basically what happened, somewhere around noontime, Colonel Blanchard either gave me over the phone or told me to come up to headquarters and pick it up, a press release which in essence stated that we had in our possession a flying saucer. It was found on a ranch out northwest of town.
Okay, the bottom set of flags there that you see, that's supposedly where the craft impacted the bluff there. And of course it kind of rested down below there after it hit. Up there at the top is supposedly where one of the little men was found sitting on that rock right there.
None of them expect to see a UFO crash there or aliens there?
No, they know that there ain't gonna be nothing there, but you know, they think, you know, maybe you have a piece of it here someplace, you know. And I've looked and looked and I haven't found a piece of it yet.
It's a very mystical place, and it has a long tradition with the Native American culture. I guess I was drawn there in 1970, the first time I came to New Mexico. I just thought it was a magical place, and I still think that. It just has such awesome beauty and potential, and something about the air and the light, and it's drawn artists, it's drawn people that are, deal with unseen worlds and unconscious impulses, and it's a really interesting mix.
Why is this an area where people seem to be coming with so little logic? They just have been drawn into this area. This can be an area of some sense of security in a spiritual way. And this is a place of different kinds of people all coming together from different spiritual circles, and we're going to find some sense of what it's like to have a human family that's ready to move into their journey to the stars, so to speak, or into another reality. And they're a lot more open for learning and enlightenment.
As you might imagine, there are a lot of people in New Mexico who are very interested in this subject, partly, I think, because of the rich history that this state has in the area of ufology.
Nowhere else in the United States do you have the juxtaposition of ancient medieval culture with modern technological science and weaponry. Actually, literally side by side. Chimayo is not that far from Los Alamos. That's exactly what I mean. Chimayo is not far from Los Alamos. You have there the medieval world. In 1939 in Mora, New Mexico, a man was tried for witchcraft because his wife said at night he turned into a frog. El Sapo. It was a very, very famous court case. Life magazine sent reporters there. This was in December of 1939 in Mora, New Mexico. They tried a guy whose initials were A.E., I don't know his last name, for witchcraft, for being a witch, for being a frog. Now that happened in 1939. That happened just like 3 months after Hitler invaded Poland. And we were trying a person for witchcraft in New Mexico.
Just tell us where we are in relation to the rest of the universe here.
You're right at the center of New Mexico, right here, of the state.
How did you find this out?
From going to Estancia, when we were buying the property, you know how they give you a map of what your property is going to be like, and and the surveyor and that sort of thing. And so we wanted to know in proximity where we were.
Now tell me a little bit about why you have theater seats out in the middle of this open field.
This is my Yucca outdoor theater.
So what do you do at nights out here in the seats? What do you look at?
Out here?
Yeah.
I look at the skies, and I look at I observe the action in the skies. At night, there's a lot of action in these skies.
We've got people that say that UFOs are just an impossible thought. And there's no way that we could have any aliens have reached this planet. Because they haven't seen them.
People do not want this to be true. Deep down inside, the average human being does not want this to be true. And they're going to refuse to believe it as long as they can afford to do so.
Oh, those skeptics, they'll never believe anything. A UFO could land on their head and they still wouldn't believe it. And that's nonsense. A true scientist goes after evidence. And if the evidence comes in and it contradicts his previous worldview, but it's sturdy, solid evidence, he will change his worldview.
But really, it's not my particular job or expertise to explain factually what's going on here. I'm trying to explain, why people tell the stories and what it means,
Some of the neighbor kids went out in the alley and drew a big alien foot in the sand, and then they came out to me and said, "David, come see." the aliens have been in our alley. And I went out there and I said, come on, kids. Look, there's just one footprint. How far do these guys jump at a time? Where's, you know, I'd expect a few footprints. And it's just a line drawn in the sand. You know, how come these aliens have cup-shaped feet? And so I debunked that effort, I would say. That was my first one. And
You know, I don't really think that this is a matter of intelligence. This is a matter of belief and a matter of individual anxiety and social anxiety. I mean, I don't think that a person's particular academic or intellectual background necessarily determines whether they'll believe or not believe.
This is everything just happened one day. He just set the camera up. There's one. Then one another. And they go faster than anything. I mean, they skip frames. When you see them in slow motion, you'll see they jump a lot of frames. There's another one. When this changes to 131, you can see our largest from upper left to lower right. There it went.
We're here in Midway, New Mexico, just about 9 miles southeast of Roswell. Back in town, everybody talks about 1947, but these folks here are videotaping UFOs every single day.
This property here, we've owned it since 1956, and it's got a history of paranormal activity. For years and years and years, people have seen ghosts, fires, demons. I mean, just a whole wide variety, you know? And you kind of just write it off, you know, as, superstition or whatever. I was young, you know, I wasn't born until 63. But it was just odd, you know, and you kind of like live with it, get used to it, and it's no big deal. Well, it didn't really matter until this last year, when the UFOs started to show up. And we thought, well, maybe there's some sort of doorway here.
You've had neighbors, you say, shoot some of the same
Oh,
stuff?
yeah, they have videos too.
They have videos.
I never thought in my wildest dreams, I never thought that I would be believing in stuff like this, you know, because, you know, I'm a hunter, you know, I'm mainly macho, you know, go out there and do your thing, you know. But I came down and I said, okay, I'll believe you, Manuel. I was one of the first. He said, look, there's stuff flying up there. Nobody wants to believe me. Will you believe me? I said, well, Manuel, I'll give you some time. Let's look and see. When I seen him with my own eyes, that's when I said, okay, if you can get him on film, so can I. So I did.
He has a lot of strange things on tape, for sure. I mean, I've seen everything he has, and I've been out shooting with him too when he's actually filming his stuff. And we tried to film, you know, stuff on Betacam while he was shooting, because we were thinking, you know, they were thinking, well, maybe it's something with the lower format that it's picking up noise or whatever and stuff. So we shot stuff with Betacam and stuff. And I mean, some of the stuff he has is incredible.
these are videotapes that show things, you know, blipping in and out. Very few frames. One of the theories I've heard bandied about is that when you're taping, just pointing at blue sky, you're going to have an occasional glitch. Maybe a bad spot on the tape, maybe a electrical surge.
You know, before all this, we didn't pay much attention to it, you know.
Right.
Why, you know?
But did you really
we didn't have
it?
the guts, in other words, you know. Why should we be the first to be called a dumbass, you know? Because that's what they look at us as, a bunch of dumbasses.
Yeah.
We're filming a bunch of bugs in the air. How in the hell can these bugs outrun a jet?
Yeah.
Have you seen that footage?
Yeah, I've seen some of theirs. Yeah.
That was,
Jason.
you should have seen it with your own eyes. That was unbelievable. This little dot just passes that jet, slaps it in the ass, and just takes off. Huh? One night we were sitting here popping some Budweisers, right? And all of a sudden these jets come by, right? Chasing this UFO. This UFO just cruising around, man. Let them get pretty close and then shot right out of their sight. They didn't even know which way was up.
I'm sure you're familiar with how stuff could be faked on video.
Mm-hmm.
Having done this, what is it? Just your impression of without doing, digitally enhancing it or doing, running computer programs. Does it look like stuff that could be faked easily or faked at all?
I think it could be faked. I mean, it's definitely possible.
I mean, why would we? To begin with, you can look around here. You see, there's no money to to even begin to do an elaborate hoax. And every day, I mean, it's like, we got better things to do. There are other things we want to do in our life, you know. UFO is not one of it, you know.
Why does it persist? I think one of the main reasons, for instance, why does the Roswell persist? Well, here's one book, here's another book, there's the movie, and it's a real moneymaker. I mean, I'm not going to tell the people of Roswell, hey, you guys, we figured this out. Don't have a big convention. Don't get thousands of tourists to spend hundreds and thousands of dollars. You don't need that, and they'd probably laugh at me.
Texas got the Alamo, where Davy Crockett bled. Mount Rushmore's got a cliff face with giant stones heads. Paris has a million things, you know that you'll go see 'em. But Roswell is the only place with 3 UFO museums. Busloads of tourists from Dallas and Japan. They ain't leaving this town without a little green man.
When and how did you make the decision to start the business here?
Well, that kind of come with the amount of people that was coming down Cotton Picking Road. They was going to come in whether I let them or not. I just kind of made up my mind. I said, you know, I either got to let them in and charge them so much, you know, for my time to come back and show them, or just, you know, be a hard butt and just lock the gate. But you're still going to have so many people come in, like those one guys said, and they was going to cut the fence and find it anyway.
So the circumstances, there's really no choice.
That's right. That's right.
Roswell is split down the middle. There's a lot of people in Roswell that want this to go away. They just want to have their sleepy little, small little southern New Mexico town back. They don't want to have it the capital, the UFO capital. They don't want to have the UFO convention there. You know, they don't like that stuff. They think the people are nuts. You know, and they think, and you know, that they just don't like it. You know, and the people that are into it and do believe or do have some stake in it or whatever you want to call it, they're, you know, they're not like shoving it down their throats, but they're just saying, hey, we're not going away. You know, this is what I believe, this is what I see.
The obvious question is, do you believe in UFOs, and do you believe that anything happened in Roswell in 1947?
You asked me this question last year, Tony, and I told you I believe in the marketing. I see, or the tourism, I see the people who are interested in this, they are curious, they certainly believe, and I believe that we need to provide every vehicle possible for them to expand on that.
You know, New Mexico is a tourism state. Our community did not have a tourist industry prior to the UFO incident or to the UFO festival, and now we have a considerable tourist attraction, and I mean that's part of business. We have another industry.
The way I feel is we've been spoon feeding this for a couple of years now, and between this year and next year we're going to start force feeding it. Whether the people of Roswell like it or not, they're going to get it.
I got really tired of going out and investigating UFO sightings because there wasn't much to them. It was over with by the time you got there. They didn't take pictures. A lot of them didn't have any photographs of anything. And by the time you talked to them, well, you know, there was no evidence at all. And you couldn't really prove it or disprove it. So I decided to go ahead and specialize in cattle mutilations. And I wasn't quite ready for all the gory mess that you see with these things, or the stench.
And this is that first mutilation I had in 1975. See how they broke the leg? And that animal deteriorated, completely deteriorated into a carcass the same way it is, and just, let's see, it was a piece of paper. This is another mutilation that we had by Lindrith, 1980. Another state police officer.
One that I recall very vividly was in the late 70s, about 78 as I remember, April. And that was in Dulce, New Mexico. And the state policeman there, Gabe Valdez, that was investigating the situation, gave us a call that he had a very fresh one. And at that time, we were having a mini conference with Tom Adams and Gary Massey. So we said we just all jumped in the car and drove down there to look at it. It was very fresh. And it was so startling because it looked to me like it had been dropped from a great distance. Its horn was driven back into the side of its head, its back was broken, one of its legs was broken, it just sort of splattered on the ground. And you could see drops of blood on its hooves, looking like, almost like it had fallen in its own spray of blood somehow. And it was classically mutilated, a cord out rectum. So I remember tongue cut off with a smooth cut, eyeball cut out with a perfect circle around the eye.
One of the interesting and I think probably pretty plausible theories of mutilations is that when an animal is killed and a predator gets to it, then the animal bloats, and what might be a sort of torn up serration of flesh will, upon bloating of the animal, expand into an almost perfectly circular shape. So some of these supposedly surgical precision wounds on the animals might just in fact be a jagged cut from a carnivore that with subsequent decomposition and bloating stretched out to a nice circular shape.
So, but I run back and forth. I jump from government involvement to alien involvement, and then sometimes I think they're both in cahoots with one another. So it depends. It's crazy.
How long do you think you're going to be involved in it?
I'll be involved in it for the rest of my life. It's a mystery and it's got me hooked. I'd love to catch him, because if I caught him, I'd prosecute him. If I could. I mean, you got to understand, these ranchers are losing so much money. I mean, this one rancher up in Eagle Nest, he lost 18 of them. That's a big cut out of his pocket.
So after 20 some odd years of investigation, what is your best guess? What is causing the cattle mutilations?
Hell if I know.
This picture has never appeared in any publication. It doesn't exist.
What's that supposed to be of?
It's not what it's supposed to be, it's what it is.
What is it?
Maybe if you held it in the light over here, I can't see.
It doesn't exist. This picture, want to take it over there and put it in the light?
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't exist. Remember that now, guys.
Where was this non-existent picture supposed to be taken? Where was this non-existent picture?
Here in New Mexico.
Let me try and find it.
Here in New Mexico?
Yes. It doesn't exist. Okay? Doesn't exist.
The case is pretty well proven that there are elements within our government who know much more about this phenomena than they are letting on. In fact, it's interesting in researching the subject, you find that up to a certain point in the late 40s, early 50s, even the authorities were very seriously considering that this was visitation by extraterrestrials. Okay, but at a certain point, it all turned around. And from that point to this very day, there's been a very concerted campaign to downplay it and downgrade it and say that, oh, well, there's really nothing there. And I think I would be correct in categorizing this as a cover-up.
The problem is that most people don't understand the need to just open the door to UFOs. For example, don't go looking for little green men in pickle jars in the Pentagon pantry. Don't go looking for crashed saucer debris. Go looking for the documents. Yeah. And if there's nothing to UFOs, then by God, there should not be anything classified.
I have helped build two main concern bases within these United States that have some significance as far as what is it called the New World Order. Number one is Dulce, New Mexico. I was involved in 1979 in a horrendous firefight with alien human type, whatever you want to call them. And I was one of the survivors. I'm probably the only talking survivor you'll ever hear.
Well, I knew that there was a man that existed, or he was talking about his adventures of Dulce, of the underground bases in Dulce. I didn't know his name in the 80s until probably the last 8 months I was able to find out the name of the person. This individual by name is Phil Schneider, claims to have been involved in a fight with aliens at an underground base in Dulce, New Mexico. That's why I have so much interest in it.
I was involved in building an addition to the deep underground military base at Dulce, New Mexico, which, by the way, is probably the United States' deepest base. It goes down 7 levels over 2.5 miles deep. As I was headed down there, to my total surprise, we found ourselves amidst a large cavern that was already full of outer space aliens, otherwise known as large graves. I was petrified, as most people might be. The only thing I could think of doing at the time was shooting at them, and I killed 2 of them.
It says 66 Secret Service agents, FBI, Black Berets, and like died in the firefight. I was there. It says this happened in 1979 in a firefight with alien humanoids.
Now, you learned recently that he was found dead in Las Vegas, is that right?
In Oregon, in the state of Oregon.
Oh, in Oregon. And what was initially the cause of death that was reported in this case?
It was, according to the medical examiner's report, it was suicide.
Now, you subsequently got a hold of the autopsy report. What did you find? What this took a little bit of a strange turn after that initial
Well, it was very
finding, right?
It was very strange that they didn't do a toxicology report. And then they did state that there was a rubber tubing tied tightly around the neck.
But how did they find that out?
Well, apparently the first officer that arrived at the scene didn't notice it, so he just removed the body without doing any further investigation.
If you had come upon this same situation, would you have at least investigated this possibly as a homicide?
Yes. I really don't think there's enough. I don't think there's enough evidence here to rule it a suicide. Too many coincidences that really makes it real, you know, real shaky, you know, raises too many flags. Why a guy that's talking so much, he keeps saying that they're going to kill him. And all of a sudden, the other thing, he dies. A police officer goes up there and does an investigation that a 1-year-old could have done better. And then on top of that, the medical examiner really messes up the report. Well, that's pretty bad.
I will break every law that it takes to talk my head off. I love my country and its people more than my life. 11 of my best friends in the last 22 years have been murdered. 8 of them called suicide. Murder by suicide, I call it.
Well, we were at Benowit's house one night, and he showed me and my wife how he was communicating with. He kept saying an alien, the Greys, and we did see it on the screen. We saw an object on the screen that looks like the picture that I have here. It looks like the facial part of it.
Allegra really calls. She talks to them, and she's not weird or anything. You know, I mean, she's 16 years old and she's a normal teenager.
It's not my voice in my head, but it's words that I see in my head, but they're not mine.
Very important to understand is that these extraterrestrials, and most of them are, ones who are wanting to help us. They're concerned about the planet, concerned about the way we are with each other, and they are here to help. They're here to assist, and they are certainly here to tell us some things.
Well, they're here to tell us, hey, we're here and we're coming down. And whether you like it or not, it's going to happen.
The one thing you cannot escape, if you look at all the evidence, there are those people who firmly and sincerely believe that strange entities have abducted them and forced them to undergo some type of physical examination. There's no way you can escape that, and that number is growing at an alarming rate.
First of all, when you were back, you had your security clearance, you were going to Washington. I know you talked about UFOs existing. Was there any discussion of abductions that had occurred, and whether that was real, real phenomenon?
Yeah, we discussed abduction, sure. And everybody felt it was real.
Huh.
Yeah. Okay. Because I personally knew it was real because my wife was abducted.
Okay. When was this?
About 1978. She was abducted continuously between about 1978 and 1983. Yeah, but she died in 1988. But yeah.
It was 1958 because we were both pregnant with our last daughters, and I remember that.
But as far as my part, I cannot remember.
The light, you remember
I remember the light. We were driving along the highway and the car stopped. It started missing and then it quit. And this light pulled up behind us and we thought it was my brother who was with state police.
Then my sister-in-law gets very panicky and starts yelling at me and showing me that the car died and she couldn't start it, and she kept juggling with the gear shift that was under the steering wheel and the ignition. And my thought was, why panic? Bruce is right behind us.
Well, I was concerned. I'm thinking, now, if this is not Bruce behind us, and our car stopped. What can we do? We're in trouble. You know, you don't know who it is. It's somebody that had something in mind, or they wouldn't have pulled up behind us that way.
My response is she was dreaming, that she had a bad dream.
Huh. What do you think now about this?
I don't know. There's too many people, I guess, that have had this experience from what I've read.
The next thing that I recall is the light coming over in front of the car, and I feel I don't know how to describe it, like I was being pulled. There was some kind of gravity, I don't know what. The next thing I know, or that I recall, is I'm in this room on a table.
The people often are taken up and put on some kind of cold steel table, and then bright lights are shined upon them, and then they're poked and prodded with surgical-like metallic instruments. And one could speculate that this has something to do with our fear of medicine, the cold impersonality of the operating room.
And I was facing a wall that was just full of instruments. Lights blinking red, green, what have you. It's just a huge instrument panel. And I was examined.
But there's another curious thing. Many of the people talk about, the women talk about gynecological experimentation. And they're very graphic in their description of what happens to their genital areas. And I think that we have their reflection of science, the medical science of gynecology, probably something having to do with abortion. Their feelings of being raped, it's probably a feminist kind of concern. Their feelings of being violated by doctors.
I mean, I don't know, it's probably an unfair question, but have you had direct communication with what you think is an extraterrestrial source?
Well, I had a very dramatic experience with it over a period of time.
Is this like into an in an unconscious state or a conscious state?
This was all completely conscious. Completely conscious. Because my wife had 2 kids for them. And we went through this process in detail. We was communicating with them why it was going on. It was sort of a cooperative effort. Instead of us being abducted, like the nominal case, we had this communication with them, so this all was carried on just in a nice, normal, cooperative manner.
And so
as the baby developed, I was able to feel the baby. The baby was growing. After a period of 3 months, they took the child. And they told us they was going to take it before they took it.
You mean after she was 3 months pregnant?
After baby.
And what about the second child?
Same thing, same process. Yeah.
And did they ask your permission for to go through all of this? And was this in a physical form that they were appearing to you, or mentally?
No, it was. My wife was a very great psychic. So they communicated through her. They took over her body, used her as a communication thing.
And then she would communicate it to you.
Yeah. Well, they would talk through her. They just use her like a radio, or whatever, transmitter and receiver, and they just talk through her. But in addition to that, my wife was unable to have children. She had a hysterectomy before she married me. She had hysterectomy. She was unable to have children, yet she had a child. They impregnated her and engineered her sufficiently that she could have a child.
You're positive she was pregnant? I mean...
Oh, sure. I mean, there was no doubt about it. Like I said, I was feeding the baby. I mean, the baby was growing there.
Okay. What about the decision to take it then? Did you all participate in that decision too?
They just told us when they was going to take it. And they took it when they said they were going to take it.
And was that all right with you and your wife? I mean, you said that was the way it was going to be?
It was all just like you had contracted with some person to carry a child for you. Well, that's exactly the kind of thing we had here.
And where do you suppose those babies are now?
They're out in space somewhere, God knows where, but they're taking care of them out in space.
Well, I I kept saying, well, why me? You know, I'm not well educated. I don't have anything to add to this life other than I'm a mother and a housewife and there's nothing special about me.
Incredible, though.
Yeah. But I mean, this was a conscious. I mean, every word I'm telling you is true. I'm not exaggerating in the slightest. I don't believe in that. I try to make everything as concise as possible. And if it was a dream, it was a hell of a dream. That's all I can say.
I think a lot of what this is really all about is our desire to have contact with the supernatural. Our desire to have more than just a rational world. If organized religion is threatened or doesn't exist anymore, then you search for contact in other ways. Maybe this is a substitute for belief in God.
Personally, I think that we are beginning to just, go into a period of time here where collectively our consciousness about the universe is going to take some stretching and some maturing. And I think that we are more and more going to encounter entities, beings, not only from outside the earth, but even perhaps from outside our own time frame or outside our own dimension.
If belief in UFOs and aliens is a search for spiritual meaning and significance, for spiritual reality, it's very typical and it's very natural and logical that that would happen in New Mexico, because the history of New Mexico has been this search for spiritual values. I mean, this state is a state that has, processions to Chimayo, that has the appearance of sacred tortillas, the image of Christ on a tree in the sap, the picture of Christ reflected in a mirror in a house in Berlin. I mean, the spiritual world is right on the surface in New Mexico. So it's natural that the alien world would be right on the surface in New Mexico.
There are more and more sightings because there's reasons. And these reasons, they're not... Native people have been given this duty to remind the Earthwalkers of what we're doing to the planet. And it's not getting across. And so it's no wonder that our sky relatives, and we call them our sky relatives, are showing up more and more to kind of shake up the systems that are around. And so in many ways we're glad that this is happening.
Would you be one of the most shocked people in the world if it turned out they actually existed?
I would well, actually no, because nothing I've said really says that I don't believe it's possible.
Occasionally when I'm outside admiring the universe, I'll say, okay guys, I'm here, let's talk, and they've never come.
I'm just absolutely convinced that there's something behind this that is incredibly important to our future. I don't know what it is, I can't define it any better than that. It's a totally gut intuitive feeling that this is not frivolous material. As much as we do poke fun at it, just to save our own sanity behind it, that there's something important going on here, no matter which answer it is, and it's possible that none of the answers that have been entertained for any of this are even close to true. It could be something that nobody's ever even considered.
When you look at all them stars out there in the universe, I mean, you think God gonna put life just here and nowhere else with all them stars out there in the universe? I mean, that's dumb, that's stupid, it'll be very inefficient of this God to create an infinite universe and only put life in one little small pebble of it. It's ridiculous.
way down low in a faraway place called Earth, a mother spider spun a web, and all the animals of life were trapped in the web. The wind began to blow, and a form in the shape of an animal began to breathe and look about, but he could not move, for he was trapped in the web. The wind stopped, and the flowers bloomed. The wind blew, and a form in the shape of a woman began to breathe and look about, but she could not move, for she was trapped in the web. The wind stopped, and the trees grew, and the willow eyes reached all the way up to the sky. Now Father Sky, he pulled out his blanket of night to cover the earth, and he put it around the earth as he did every night. And he looked through the holes. Some call these stars, but they're not stars. They're holes for Father Sky to look through. So Father Sky, he looked through the hole in the blanket, and he saw all the animals of life trapped in the web. And he saw woman trapped in the web, and he began to cry. His tears fell down through the holes in the blanket, down, 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 and the more tears fell, they came up higher and higher to the great weaving web. But the mother spider, she just kept weaving. Well, Brother Moon came by, and Brother Moon, oh, he's a fine fellow. He asked Father Sky why he was crying. And Father Sky told him. Oh, Brother Moon. He shook his head, and from his long hair fell Snake. And Snake fell down through the hole of the blanket, down, down, down to the earth, and buried under the ground. Well, soon the water came in behind him, and he could not breathe. So he began to bury up, 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 and he shot into the air. But he was trapped by something he could not see. But he was Snake, and Snake is strong, and Snake is powerful, and Snake surged and pushed and broke through the web and went to higher ground. He heard a loud sound behind him, but he did not turn to see. And now we are all here in this place and this place.